Okay, hello. My name is John Fultz, and I am with the user interface group, Wolfram Research. And I'm actually here accompanied by Lou DeAndrea. Go ahead and say hi, Lou.
Good morning. Hello.
And also accompanied by Ian Hodgnicki.
Hello.
And Lou and Ian are my colleagues who are going to be helping me out to present this, jumping in whenever I fumble or helping to keep an eye out for questions that I should be looking for and that sort of thing. We're going to be talking about features which are new in version 12 in the version 12 user interface specifically. If you want to read ahead, I'm going to be working my way through our page here, discussing the notebook interface. This is if you go in the new in version 12. If you look in new in version 12, and it's just to orient you, there's has featured Mathematica 12 areas. And if we scroll down on the left here, there's one for notebook interface. And this is not a canned, prepared presentation. I'm kind of, speaking a bit extemporaneously here, but I spent a lot of time working on putting together this material with help from Lou and Ian and others, and so hopefully I should be able to put something out, to give a presentation here, which will be useful. Before I begin, though, actually, I wanted to just have a very brief diversion because today is a big day for Wolfram Research. We are releasing a new product, and the product is it's something called Wolfram Engine, and it's a new thing you'll find right here from the top menu of our main page. And Wolfram Engine is basically, it's a Wolfram desktop or Mathematica, or the product in that vein, but it is for free download. And it's a language-oriented product, something which is geared towards making the Wolfram language available for, especially geared towards people who were doing some sort of software development. You might not necessarily consider yourself a software developer, and you might be somebody who does casual development in in the aid of some other sort of goal like data science or something like that. But it's this is a free product. Does not the limitation here. It does not include the ability to use the standard notebook user interface for inputs, like what I'm going to be demoing here during my entire presentation. But it does include the full language. There's a lot of really exciting stuff here. Stephen Wolfram is going to be talking about this at the Collision conference today, but this is our big release. We've been working very hard for it, and it's I think it's something that's going to be very exciting. And if you know people who have, and I spoke to somebody in the wild not 2 days ago who was telling me, yeah, I'd really like to use Mathematica, but the cost is an issue for me. People like that, let them know about this. It's a way to get access to the language for free. So very exciting there. That was a little diversion. I'm going to close that tab. We are done discussing that. And now it's back to the notebook interface. Okay. So the couple things right off the top. Now, lots of things I have demonstrations for, but first couple of points here were things that were a bit difficult to, have kind of, a walkthrough or a demonstration for. One of the biggest things for this release is that we have now, at long last, finally switched over to a modern macOS front end. two big changes here. The first big change is that it's 64-bit, and this is really important. Now, in some sense, we've had a 64-bit product, from the very beginning. We were one of the first people to release anything 64-bit on Mac OS, which was the kernel. The Wolfram language kernel has been 64-bit forever. In fact, much longer than even a lot of Apple's stuff. And I remember the day when Apple shipped out an operating system update that broke every 64-bit application. And it was so early that we were one of the few that were affected by it. So on the kernel side, we've had 64-bit for a long time, but the front end, this is very new for us. And part of the reason that it took us so long is that part and parcel of being a 64-bit application is that we had to take a lot of code which was written for an older windowing API, a thing which Apple called Carbon, and we had to migrate it over to their newer API, which is called Cocoa. And the migration to Cocoa also gets us significant modernization and a good base to build upon for future features. The good news is that if you look at the macOS front end, and this is the macOS front end right here, and it will look very similar. There are a few places where some user interface things look a little different, and these are typically things which made sense because of the way that Cocoa does things, as different from Carbon. So probably the most notable example is the Magnification Widget. Magnification Widget now lives in the toolbar instead of living in the status area down below like it used to. And there are a few dialog boxes, system native dialog boxes that look different because we're going with the, with the Cocoa user interface choices there. But aside from that, this is a front end which you will fundamentally recognize if you're a Mac user. And we've been using it daily for many months before the release, and it's really in quite nice shape, and we're very proud of it, and it puts us on a good footing going into the future as Apple people anticipate is going to be releasing versions of macOS which no longer support 32-bit applications. And so the entire product is 64-bit clean. This was the big port, but there were a few other things. The app bundle under macOS contains quite a number of binaries inside of it. There's the front end binary and the kernel binary and a number of other much smaller binaries. And we not only ported the front end to 64-bit, we also ported all of the remaining 32-bit binaries 64-bit. So big project where that and sets us on the road for the future. And kind of similar, and sorry, I don't have I meant to have a demo set up for this, and I did not get the chance. But one of the interesting things here is that that on Linux, so it has been the case that when you're doing operations from the command line, and let's say let's go ahead and oops, that's not what I wanted. That's what I wanted. And where did that window go? Here we go. Nope, that's not it. Sorry, give me a second. I'm working with two monitors and it's, there we go. There we go. Okay, so so you can of course be running something from the command line. Now I'm just using Wolfram script to launch a kernel here, but you could have launched, and that's actually a 12.1 kernel and looking a bit into the future. Actually, let me go ahead and launch a 12.0 kernel. and here we go. Here's our 12.0 kernel. So that kernel, of course, runs completely standalone, but sometimes there are some operations which you might need to call into a front end for. And a good example of that is rasterize. So only in the system, only the front end is capable of taking graphics primitives and turning them into pixels, which of course it does so to put on the screen all the time. So if we have graphics of line, actually let's just say graphics of disk, there we go. And that is fine. And we'll show that. But now if we do rasterize of G, and you'll notice short delay there. And now notice that we've started up a front end here. In this case, it's just a copy of the front end called Mathematica Server, but this is really a front end. So this is something that we've supported for a very long time, and it's a way you can, use the Wolfram language from a terminal session and still be able to access all the functionality. But a problem that has been the case is that under Linux, when you do this front end that's running required an X server. And we did automate that. We included a version of XVNC, but that was not without its problems. And it was basically, another bit of technology that we didn't control, which sometimes failed, sometimes was a bit disappointing. And so what we've done is we've completely now cut that bit of technology out of the loop on Linux. If you are running in a Linux prompt with no X server at all, then the Linux front end can still launch and run in completely headless mode. This is really great if you're running on a server, and we run a lot of these on servers, so it's important for us. Okay, so that's the kind of boring, less flashy stuff. Let's then walk into some of these other points. And I've spent a lot of time with my prologue, so I'm going to try to speed up a bit here. Publishing notebooks to the cloud. So basically, what this means is that I can take a notebook and just make a quick notebook here. Notice that this is an untitled notebook. I haven't saved it anywhere. And it doesn't matter whether you have or not is the point. And now I'm just going to publish to cloud. So with that menu item, we have a couple options. I can password protect or allow anyone to access. I can specify a name on this. And if it's a name I've already used, it will overwrite. So that's a way I can update something in place, or just automatically assign a URL, because I don't really care about the name, but I don't want it to replace anything. I want it to be new. I'll just go ahead and do it that way for the moment. And we'll publish. And here we have so it's already published, and we can click the link, and there we go. And this is a copy of the notebook that anyone can look at. Notice I'm not even signed in. So anyone can look at this if it has, let's do our favorite generic manipulate here. And so there's our manipulate, and let's go ahead and publish that guy. And we'll also make that a generic one. And we'll go view it real quick. And there we go. And it takes just a second to pop up that manipulate. And the manipulate works. So it's the cloud, so it's not quite as alive as the one on the desktop, but it works. Now I can't type in here, this is a published notebook, not an editable notebook. This is made for everyone to look at. I can't evaluate, but I do get working manipulates, and it was really easy for me to just take content that I had on my desktop and put it out there for the world to see. And if this is particularly useful if, and I've run into this problem where I've wanted to share a notebook, but the process of saving a notebook and then setting all the share permissions and then making sure everyone who wants to see it has a Wolfram ID, and I remember to add all of them, and that's all of that is friction. If I don't mind it being world readable, then then I can just do that, and I can go back and I can then copy the link, and then I can send it in email to friends. I also have code that I can embed it in an iframe in my own HTML. So that is the concept of publishing. Okay, let me close those. And let me move on to the next thing here. Okay, so similarly to publishing, and another thing that you might want to do is you might want to just email a notebook to someone. Now, under Windows, we've been able to do this for a long time. We've had this under the file menu on Windows. We've had this item, which is kind of a semi-standard item under Windows called send to. And it's basically send to someone, send the document to someone. And one downside of send to, though, is that it uses this this interface on Windows called MAPI, M-A-P-I, which requires it's basically a way of communicating with local email clients. And Microsoft made this in a world where everyone was using local email clients, but a lot of people don't use local email clients anymore. They use Gmail or some other modern thing in the web, some sort of webmail thing. So I'd like to be able to email a notebook. Maybe I don't even have a local client. Maybe I have a local client, but it's not set up. So now I can just do send to. This is now available on all platforms. And if you're logged into the cloud, then by default, and there we go. I actually hadn't logged in yet. That's interesting. Wait, am I logged in on this system? Yeah, I am. Okay. Well, okay. So here I want to send to somebody else, at wolfram.com. Everybody knows my email address. I'm not going to give out other people's email addresses. And so I can include a message. Of course, I can CC folks or whatever, which pops out new fields. And I have two options here. I can send as an attachment. Of course, this is the normal sort of thing. Or I can send as a cloud link. Now, what send as a cloud link does, it basically publishes the notebook, and then takes the URL from the published version and sends that to someone. So this actually builds on the published feature as a possibility. So if you prefer not to go through Wolfram Cloud, you can configure your email settings. So you can use your preferred SMTP server or whatever, and I can add an email server there. I'm not going to do that now, but that is an option. Okay, so that's emailing notebooks. Presenting notebooks. So we've had the ability to have slideshows for a long time, and if you've ever been to any kind of Wolfram Research event where Wolfram speakers are giving talks, you've probably seen those kinds of slideshows. And we now have a new set of tools, a completely new tooling around slideshows, and we refer to these as presenter notebooks. And so I'm just going to create a new one from scratch here. And so I can choose various themes. One of the interesting things, now themes set specific fonts and colors, but one of the interesting things is I can kind of start with any of these themes, but I can then, have some choice in colors, if I want to do that. So, so already, we're getting a lot more choices than we had before. And let's go ahead. I don't want to spend a lot of time writing content, so let's go for demonstration purposes. So let's go ahead and pre-populate some content. Okay, and here we go. And so your presenter notebook is going to have this toolbar up here, and the toolbar has lots of options to help you out with authoring. And I'm not going to go through all the options, but I'll go through a few of them. So this is an interesting one, and this is let's see which button creates it. Oh, yeah, okay. So okay. So I have side notes here, and side notes are something that it's just a style that you can get from here. Here's your pop down for styles, side notes, and side code as well. So, so you see, this is a side code cell. This is a side note cell. It has this kind of dash line around it to indicate that when I present, it's going to go away. So what use is that? Well, it might be useful to have some kind of notes as you're presenting. And so if I start presentation, but this is going to go full screen. I need to kick it out of full screen for what I want to do here. No, actually, is okay. Anybody remember how to kick it out of? Ian, you remember how to kick it out of full screen, or Lou?
Can you right click on the content?
Actually, there we go. Yeah. There we go. I can just use, yeah. Okay, so there we go. So I'm in presentation mode now. And then I can actually, if I had a dual monitor setup, showing this on the one monitor, so everyone can see it here, but if I had the dual monitor setup, I can use this to navigate, but also when I'm navigating, I can actually see side note cells. And so not only can I see side note cells, I believe, so, I can say, well, there was something else I want to do here. Here's a thing I want to show. Boom. And there we go. So, so that's kind of a neat feature. Let's go ahead and end the presentation there. And there are a bunch of other features, including the ability to, in authoring mode, to kind of set your window size. If you have an expectation that you're going to be on a projector at a certain aspect ratio, that's really useful. And to be able to control various other elements, a lot of editing stuff right up top here we've been looking at, things to help with cell alignment, or also just, kind of nudging if, I just want to move that a bit closer, to that really, really close, or farther away. So kind of one-off sorts of operations here that are really convenient. So, and I'm just, I'm not going deep into the presenter tools. I just, really just covered a little bit there. There's a lot more exciting stuff to look at. If you like to, if you do presentations, if notebooks are a good venue for your presentations, and I think they're a good venue for lots of kinds of presentations. It's a great thing to look at. So, control summary boxes. Well, so actually, you know what? I'm going to take this one slightly out of order here. There's some relation between that and iconization. So, so let me start actually by discussing iconize. Okay, so what is iconize? So the idea is that I want, and I'm going to go ahead and start this evaluating, and because this takes a little bit to run. And so what I want is I want a way to, this is taking, it'll probably take 20 seconds, maybe 30. But I don't want to run this every single time. I really don't want to do that. And I could snapshot the data. I could make a local version of it, but if I make a local version of it, it's another free floating file, which has to live in a certain location. If I send this notebook to someone else, that's not much good. So what I really want to do, and I hope GitHub is actually up right now, maybe just a little longer than I thought it was. But what I really want to do is I just want to have this data living in my notebook. If I'm sharing a file, just sharing the notebook. And if the data were just in the notebook, that would be ideal. And so that's actually what's going on here is I use the iconize. Oh, and look, something did go wrong with GitHub. Okay, well, that wasn't under my control. I can't be blamed for that one. So actually this, and I think this is, yes, so that's not going to be much of anything there. Okay, so so I won't be able to run the examples just as they are without that data set, but I can do a similar sort of thing with just just say random real of let's of 10,000. About that. So if I just iconize, I get a kind of nameless blob, shows me that it has 10,000 elements. But if I give it a second argument, then I get something that has a name on it, so it's completely identifiable. And so now I can copy this down. I can do, data equals, and I'm pressing Command L, Control L on Windows and Linux. Oops, sorry, Command Shift L is what I meant. Command L copies input down, Command Shift L copies the output down. Or I could have just selected it, copied and pasted as well. And there we go. And now I can take a look at length of data. So this is a proxy for the actual, the actual expression. But this is stored in the notebook now. This is really, really there in the notebook. So, if I do, let's say take the first 10 elements of that. Okay, and now I'm going to quit kernel. And there's a beep saying the kernel went away. And now I'm not going to do this random real thing again. Even if I did, it would have different reals. But I'm just going to reevaluate that guy there. And now length. And now that should be exactly the same. And so it is. And so this means now this data is really in the notebook, and it's stored efficiently in the notebook. And I don't know of any other notebook technology that can do anything like this. And remember, okay, so this example was about data, but remember that Wolfram language is symbolic language. And what does that mean? that means that data can be code, and data is code, and code is data. So I did this with data, but let's think outside the box. So here I have a little bit where I'm using unevaluated, and the purpose of unevaluated is what I want to actually store in iconize is this compound expression. I don't want to actually evaluate the compound expression. I want to store the unevaluated version of the compound expression in iconize. And so I evaluate this, and now I have my initialization code blob. And so now, and actually, I'm going to bet that might not work very well with the copy and paste. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so in fact, the copy and paste, kind of amusing that the copy and paste actually exploded all of that out. That's really not the point. The point is I wanted to be able to, I'm going to use my Command-Shift-L, copy down again, and there we go. This is, by the way, this is a bit of code that I tweaked a very tiny bit, but this is a bit of code that I pulled from a demonstration. And so the idea is that, I want to kind of show the idea of things, and these functions, they kind of explain themselves, but I don't want to show all the implementation. I want somebody to be able to look at this, get an idea what it's done, but I don't want to bury them in implementational details. So I hide the implementational details behind that guy there. And so then I can evaluate, and now I have my my manipulate expression with input that was actually readable. So now maybe, of course, I do want to see the implementation. And so what I can do is I can right click, and I can uniconize. Oh, I can't uniconize something that I created. Okay, that's a little bit of a glitch, which we should fix. So let me just show another way. So if I type this in interactively and I gotten this thing to work, but then I wanted to hide it. So another way I could have done it is right click, iconize selection. So here we don't get a name thing, but I can iconize really just to, any bit that I wanted to here. And I can select, any set of sub expressions that I want, and do the same thing. If you have ever worked in a coding environment that has a notion of code folding, this is really a lot like that. And I'm being a bit OCD here about just doing all of these things. Oops, that's not what I wanted. I didn't want to comment in it. I wanted to iconize it. There we go. And so now we have our same thing here. And if I want to uniconize it, boom, it just goes right back. So that is both the interactive and non-interactive forms of iconize. But the story here is efficiently storing code and data in your notebook in a way that isn't just a big wall of text dump. You want something that gets the idea across, but is prettier to look at. Not just prettier, but comprehensible to look at. And now let me go back to control summary box storage. So control summary box storage, essentially these are, we internally we call them summary boxes. Internally, we refer to them as summary blobs. So I may use the word blob here, but these really are just customized typesetting, but it's doing the exact same thing. So it's it's not iconized, but it is a bit of in notebook magic, which is basically taking is taking this data, and so I can do, and as in the example here, if I do a triple equal Command Shift L, that's true, that's good. But when we create these things as a result of, if you create it by iconize, you're always going to get a fully iconized, fully data populated thing. But with something like sparse array, we're aware of, or other functions which can get quite large. We're aware that sometimes you just kind of want to see the result, and you don't necessarily need all the data in the notebook. Getting all the data into the notebook might have some overhead, and so there's actually a limit beyond which we don't populate the data in the notebook. And the limit is $summary box data size limit. So if we take something that's much larger here, and hopefully this will not take. Okay, so here we've gotten a warning now that, okay, so you've seen what the result is. The result is in the kernel. We can use it in the kernel however we want. But in this case, it was so large, which is to say exceeding the size of $summary box data size limit, that we elected not to store it in the notebook as a kind of an optimization. But maybe you really wanted it stored in the notebook anyway. Now, this $summary box data size limit, that's settable. You can set that globally, or you can just choose right here. And it's telling you actually how much memory we're talking about. So how much am I going to grow the notebook? It's going to be something like 2.4 megabytes. It probably just a little bit larger than that actually when it's actually saved to disk. And so if I were to do Command Shift L here, and then this is going to fail.
John, I think you mean B, triple equal sparse array.
Oh, thank you. And so this is, it didn't even evaluate. I mean, it's kind of treating it, or it may have evaluated. What was, I'm just curious now what that actually, okay, yeah. So, I mean, if I'd put, say, true Q around that, okay, not sure why that doesn't return false. But if I were to, and of course I can only press that button while the kernel's running, because once the kernel session is over, then the data is no longer available. But now I get true. Okay, so that is the idea behind control summary box storage. Hopefully it makes sense why I want to take that a bit out of order. Password dialogues, I'm not going to go too far into this, but this is just, if you're constructing a UI, this is a thing that you could do before we gave you kind of all the tools to do it. But now we, instead of having to build your own dialog box with a special kind of input field and so on, now we just have this thing called authentication dialog. And I think you can dig into these yourself. I'm not going to spend any time going through those examples. I think it's fairly self-explanatory. Okay. More in terms of being able to present useful information in the notebook. So information, and by the way, if you don't know what information is the thing that you get when you do question mark. I think a lot of people, especially a lot of people who've been using language for a long time, are familiar with question mark. And information is just the input form of question mark. So now when you call information on a symbol, it's kind of an updated thing, but we get more information. And so notice I expanded here. One of my peeves before was, oh, that I'd have to remember to do, double question mark to see what the attributes were or something like that. And here we have, some very nice things, links to documentation, local and remote, list of options, which is openable. And we can see all the default options right there. So if that's the only reason you were going through the documentation, not necessary anymore. You can just do it right in place. Attributes and information about the context. All this stuff is available for your own symbols too. If you've done function definitions with options and so on, all that will be available here. You don't have to do anything except just utilize the standard machinery and it will show up. But in addition, we try to give information about, let's see. Well, there's our sparse array. So that one, and this one's kind of long. I don't know if there's anything useful in this one. No, not terribly useful in this one, so let's get rid of that. But there are a number of things which where we can get some useful information out of. And so here's an example of some place where we're calling information on an image. And that's exactly what this is. If I copy it and paste it, there we go. That's not what I meant. I meant head. There we go. So we have a thing that's an image. And so now we call information on it. And now information understands, hey, I'm dealing with an image, so I can give different bits of useful information. So this, and this is something that we've started plugging information into a bunch of different areas. So here, oops. So here is another one which Lou forwarded to me right before the meeting. And so this is an example where we have a classifier function, and now we're getting information on the classifier function. There's examples here with audio and data bins, and entities. And so this is, this is an interesting concept. There are a lot of directions that I think we'll be taking this in future versions. This shows a number of the things that have been implemented for now. So that is information. And then the remaining stuff is mostly is stuff that just dealing with stuff inside the notebooks. So we have, and let me just, I've been doing mostly input cells. So let me just create a group here. Notice now that we have this new inline opener. So if you close a group, you get this opener. This is useful because if before, the only way to tell that you had a group, so so if I did that, the only way to tell that you had a group is you had to look at the brackets on the right, and you had to kind of understand the hieroglyphics here. But now it kind of makes much more sense that if we have something like this, we have these three things in a row, and they're all closed up. And now it's really easy to tell which groups have content and which groups don't. And I can just open them up like that and toggle. If I happen to toggle out here, let's see. So sometimes it will go away if you toggle outside there. If you just kind of didn't want to see the opener. These openers can also be turned off. I mean, they're on by default, but they can be turned off globally if you don't like them. But a useful way that tries not to get in the way of anything, but to show you that you have closed cell groups. The in-out labels. So we've seen a bit of that already. Although I didn't really point it out when we were doing it, but so when I evaluate quit, notice that these labels changed. and I have a little magnifier there. I'm not sure if that's coming through the Zoom session or not. Here we go. There we go. So basically, the this indicates that these cells have not been evaluated in the kernel session that is running right now, and that means, and this is actually sensitive to, I can save. Let me go ahead and save this in my documents as Untitled 1, and I'm going to close it, and I'm going to reopen it here, and it's still same thing. This is a cool feature, but let's say I close it, and then I'm quit the kernel, and now I reopen it. And now it understands. Now they're all grayed down because none of them have been evaluated in a kernel session that's currently running. So yeah, now if you want to see, and one of the things that's really useful here is that if you use the percent number notation to refer to a specific out number, you're now not going to get confused by potentially referring to an out number that's stale. If you really want to see it, there's tooltip there, out 9 in a previous session. But yeah, so this is basically just a way to kind of indicate, the cell's actually been evaluated in a kernel session, which is still running right now. And it keeps track of all kernel sessions. So if you have multiple kernels running simultaneously, it's tracking them independently. So that's the smart in out cell labels, the improved auto multiplication, and wakey. Okay, yeah. So this is so we've had auto multiplication for a while, where you do 2 space 3, and then it says maybe that space wasn't clear enough. So let's insert a multiplication sign. We'll make it gray to indicate that you didn't actually type it. And it's not actually there. If we were to look at the underlying data, it's still space, but that space means multiplication. So we're going to hint that multiplication is what you really wanted. So that sort of thing we've had for a long time. We've done it for numbers being multiplied together in a few other cases. One of the big ones, though, which oh yeah, that is not copy pastable. Okay. So if we have something like this, and we might in a previous version, we might have had our attention called to something's going on here, with the caret here, the weird sort of indentation, but maybe it's not so obvious, or maybe we're in another context where there wouldn't have been a red caret there. But what went wrong? Well, now so this auto multiplication at the end of new lines, that's a new thing. And so this is telling us, hey, this is being interpreted as multiplication. Maybe that's what you meant. Maybe what you really meant was to type comma. And now everything fixes itself. And we also add auto multiplications between things that look like maybe we need to call them out. There are some cases where we don't, where it's obvious. If you do sine of x, cosine of x, we don't do that. I even typed a space in there, and we don't do it there because these are mathematical type functions, and we're thinking you don't want to have these auto multiplication signs coming out, say, like in a DSolve or something like that, a differential equation solve expression. But we do add it places where potentially, quite regularly, the the fact that there's only a space is an error and we want to call your attention to it. Or maybe it's expected, but we just want to make sure for code clarity that we're showing it to you. It's almost the end. And then, so we've been doing all kinds of things with what we call our user assistance initiative, in terms of completions and templates and other sorts of things. This is another step forward in this is the ability, which we didn't have before, to be able to show not just, so what we've had before is we've had the ability to, if I type in escape A, and then it shows kind of all of the completions that might begin with A, escape A, escape being alpha, or escape A backtick being A grave, for example, and I can complete that. But what we've added this new is we're not just doing that for characters, we're also doing it for other sorts of completions that you've added. And we've added a number of them, which a few of which you can see here, but we've added a number of others. But the problem was always how would people know about them if we, we could put them in the documentation, but you have to go looking in the documentation for them. So now this is calling them out in a more direct way and allows you to kind of, maybe sometimes have a happy accident where you were typing something else and then you see something useful and you say, hey, I should start using that. So that is the big list of things that I really wanted to go through. More details, of course, on this page. I encourage you to check things out, and kind of summary bullet points up here. And Ian and Lou, I don't know if people were asking questions that you might want to highlight or call out. Want to take a little bit of time to deal with questions before we finish up here.
Not a question, but something that I probably should have interrupted you while you were talking about Iconize. I wanted to point out that Iconize now exists not only in the right-click menu, but also in the main edit menu, and
yes,
it has a keyboard
yes,
accelerator.
Thank you. Ha, and I forgot that we added the keyboard accelerator. I think I was even the one who recommended this specific accelerator, and then I forgot about it. So yes. If you're wondering what kind of sense control command apostrophe makes, it kind of builds on the notion of command apostrophe, which is used to open and close cell groups. Command apostrophe, which is used to open and close cell groups, and iconize is kind of a form of opening and closing. So that's the idea, is going to try to relate the two together. So anything else that is that we should call out? Questions coming through? Is that a no? Ian, Lou, do you have anything you want to call out before we finish up here?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think that covers it.
Okay. So I hope the presentation was useful. Reminder to go check out Wolfram Engine. And thank you for your time. I hope you enjoy the version 12 front end. And we're always open to suggestions. If you have things that you'd hoped we'd be working on for version 12 and didn't make it in, let us know. So thank you very much, and have a good day, everyone.